Months passed, and the world began to change in ways no one could have predicted. The Valen's gift of advanced technology sparked a wave of innovation that rippled across every corner of the globe. Factories once powered by coal and oil transitioned to clean energy reactors, their emissions replaced by silence and efficiency. Cities grew quieter as electric vehicles became the norm, their hum blending seamlessly with the sounds of daily life. Medical facilities reported breakthroughs almost weekly. Diseases once thought incurable were now treatable, and lifespans began to extend. But the changes weren't just technological. Something deeper was happening. People talked more openly about cooperation and unity, inspired by the trials the Valens had set for humanity. Laura Bennett noticed it first in her interviews. Farmers in rural communities spoke about sharing resources during droughts. Teachers described students working together on projects instead of competing for grades. Even politicians, often divided by ideology, found common ground on issues like climate restoration and global health. Daniel Carter spent much of his time traveling, helping governments and organizations implement the Valens technology responsibly. He worked closely with Maria Rodriguez, whose expertise in robotics proved invaluable in adapting alien designs for human use. Together, they ensured the devices were accessible to everyone, not just wealthy nations or corporations. It wasn't easy. There were arguments, setbacks, and moments when it felt like greed might overshadow progress. But Daniel reminded himself of Cal's warning: technology alone cannot fix your flaws. Every decision they made reinforced the importance of fairness and collaboration. Ethan Cole, too, found a new purpose. Haunted by his past as a soldier, he had initially struggled to see how he fit into this new era of peace. But as he traveled to conflict zones, helping distribute clean water and medical supplies, he realized his skills could be used to heal rather than harm. He became an advocate for disarmament, speaking at conferences and meeting with military leaders to discuss reducing weapons stockpiles. War doesn't solve problems, he told anyone who would listen. It creates them. Laura documented these shifts in her writing, capturing stories of hope and resilience. Her articles reached millions, inspiring people to believe in the possibility of a better future. Yet, she remained cautious. Humanity's progress was fragile, and old habits died hard. She saw glimpses of resistance, corporations lobbying to monopolize the new technologies, politicians exploiting fear to maintain power, and individuals clinging to outdated beliefs. Still, she held on to the lessons from the Valens trials. Change was possible if people chose to work together. One evening, as Daniel and Laura sat on a park bench overlooking the city skyline, they reflected on how far they'd come. The air smelled cleaner, the streets were quieter, and the lights shimmered brighter than before. "Do you think we're doing enough?" Laura asked, breaking the silence. Daniel sighed, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I think we're doing better than we were." Their conversation turned to the Valens. Neither had heard from Cale or his kind since their departure, but their presence lingered in the minds of everyone who had witnessed their arrival. Were they watching? Had they moved on to another civilization in need of guidance? Laura wondered aloud if humanity would ever truly understand the depth of what the Valens had offered. "Maybe it's not about understanding them," Daniel said thoughtfully. "Maybe it's about understanding ourselves." As winter approached, signs of unity continued to grow. A global initiative called Project Harmony brought together scientists, engineers, and activists to tackle Earth's most pressing challenges. Schools introduced programs teaching children about empathy, problem-solving, and the value of teamwork. Even social media, once a breeding ground for division, transformed into a platform for sharing solutions and celebrating progress. Yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. Not everyone embraced the changes. Some feared losing traditions or ways of life. Others resented the rapid pace of transformation, longing for simpler times. Laura wrote about these struggles too, reminding readers that progress wasn't perfect, but it was worth pursuing. By the end of the year, Humanity stood at a crossroads. The Valen's visit had forced people to confront their flaws and imagine a different path forward. Whether they stayed on that path depended on their willingness to keep trying. As Daniel often said, "We're not perfect, but maybe we don't have to be." For now, that was enough. The sky above New York City turned an eerie shade of orange as the sun dipped below the horizon. People on the streets stopped in their tracks, their eyes glued to the heavens. Massive ships, sleek and metallic, descended silently from the clouds, casting long shadows over the city. They hovered effortlessly, their surfaces shimmering like liquid metal under the fading light. No one spoke. The only sounds were distant car horns and the occasional gasp. It was as if the entire world had collectively held its breath. Daniel Carter stood on the rooftop of a research facility, his binoculars trained on the largest ship. A scientist by profession, he couldn't help but marvel at the precision of their movements. The ships didn't wobble or emit any noise. No engine hum, no visible exhaust. Whatever powered them was beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. His mind raced with questions. Why were they here? What did they want? And most importantly, why weren't they attacking? Down below, Laura Bennett pushed her way through the growing crowd, her phone raised high to record the scene. As a journalist, she knew this was the story of a lifetime. Her heart pounded in her chest, partly from excitement and partly from fear. Around her, people whispered nervously. Some clutched their children tightly, while others stared upward with wide, unblinking eyes. A man near her muttered something about the end of the world, but Laura shook her head. These ships weren't behaving like invaders. They were too calm, too deliberate. Then it happened. A soft hum filled the air, resonating deep within everyone's bones. It wasn't loud, but it was impossible to ignore. The sound grew steadier, and then, without warning, a voice echoed, not from speakers, but seemingly inside their minds. "We come to understand your species," it said. The words were clear, measured, and devoid of emotion. Panic rippled through the crowd, but the voice continued. "Do not fear us. We mean no harm." Laura lowered her phone, her hands trembling slightly. She glanced around, noticing how everyone reacted differently. Some dropped to their knees in prayer, others covered their ears as if trying to block out the voice, and a few simply stood frozen, staring blankly ahead. Daniel, still on the rooftop, felt a chill run down his spine. He'd spent years studying the cosmos, searching for signs of extraterrestrial life. Now, here they were, communicating directly with humanity. But their message puzzled him. Why would they travel across unimaginable distances just to understand humans? As the initial shock began to wear off, the streets erupted into chaos. Reporters scrambled to set up live broadcasts, military vehicles rolled into position, and helicopters circled overhead. Yet, despite all the commotion, the alien ships remained motionless, watching silently. It was as though they were waiting for something, or someone, to make the next move. Back in her apartment later that evening, Laura replayed the footage she'd captured earlier. She zoomed in on one of the ships, focusing on the intricate patterns etched into its surface. There was something almost artistic about its design, as if the creators had intended it to be more than just a vessel. Her phone buzzed with notifications, messages from colleagues, friends, even strangers asking for her take on what had happened. She ignored them, her thoughts consumed by the aliens' cryptic words. Meanwhile, Daniel sat alone in his office, surrounded by books and papers. He scribbled notes furiously, trying to make sense of everything. The aliens' arrival wasn't random. He was sure of that. But their claim to understand humanity left him uneasy. Did they know about Earth's history of wars, greed, and destruction? Did they see humans as savages or survivors? Or perhaps something else entirely? By midnight, social media was ablaze with theories. Some claimed the aliens were gods returning to judge humanity. Others believed they were here to conquer and enslave. But Daniel and Laura shared a different feeling, one of curiosity mixed with dread. Whatever these beings wanted, It was clear they had already started testing humanity in ways no one could have anticipated. The next morning, the world was abuzz with activity. Governments held emergency meetings, scientists debated theories, and ordinary people gathered in streets and parks, discussing what the aliens might do next. Amid the chaos, a message came from the United Nations. A delegation of humans would meet the aliens face to face. The location chosen was a wide-open field outside Washington, D.C., far enough from cities to avoid panic, but close enough for security forces to monitor. Daniel Carter received a call early that day. He wasn't surprised. His expertise in astrophysics made him a natural choice for the team. Still, he felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he packed his bag. Laura Bennett, too, had been invited. Not officially, but her persistent reporting caught the attention of officials who thought her insights might be valuable. She arrived at the meeting point clutching her notebook, her pen clicking nervously between her fingers. The scene at the field was surreal. Military vehicles lined the perimeter, their lights flashing silently. Soldiers stood at attention, weapons slung over their shoulders but not raised. A small stage had been set up for the human representatives, complete with microphones and cameras broadcasting live to millions around the globe. Journalists jostled for position behind barricades, shouting questions no one could answer yet. Then, without warning, the largest alien ship descended gracefully into view. It hovered just above the ground, its surface shimmering like water under sunlight. A section of the ship slid open, revealing a group of beings stepping out. They were tall and slender, with elongated limbs and translucent skin that glowed faintly. Their eyes were large and black, reflecting light in an unsettling way. They moved in perfect unison, as if connected by some unseen force. General Matthew Hayes, a stern man with graying hair, stepped forward to greet them. Beside him stood Daniel, Laura, and a few other experts chosen for their knowledge. The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone held their breath as one of the aliens approached. His presence was commanding, though he didn't speak aloud. Instead, a voice echoed in everyone's minds, calm and steady. "I am Kel," it said. "We have come to learn about your kind." Laura instinctively reached for her notebook, jotting down every detail she could observe. Kel's words intrigued her. They weren't asking for resources, land, or power. They simply wanted to understand. But understand what? Humanity's achievements, its flaws, or something deeper. Daniel found himself staring at Kel, trying to decipher his expression. The alien's face was smooth, almost featureless, giving nothing away. Finally, Daniel spoke up. "Why are you so interested in us?" he asked, his voice steadier than he expected. Kel tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question. "Your species is unique," he replied. "You fight endlessly, even when survival is uncertain. Are you not afraid of war?" The question hung in the air, heavy and profound. General Hayes shifted uncomfortably, while others exchanged puzzled glances. Laura scribbled furiously in her notebook, capturing the moment word for word. Fear of war. It seemed absurd to ask such a thing. Humans were afraid of many things. Failure, death, loss. But war itself, that was different. War was often seen as inevitable, a necessary evil. Kel continued, his tone unchanged. "In our travels, we have encountered civilizations that avoid conflict entirely. Others resolve disputes through means unknown to you. Yet your history is filled with battles, destruction, and suffering. Why do you choose this path?" Daniel hesitated, unsure how to respond. Laura, however, leaned forward slightly. "Maybe it's not about choice," she said softly. "Sometimes fear drives us to fight because we think it's the only way to protect ourselves." Her words surprised even her, but they seemed to resonate with Kel. He studied her for a moment before nodding slowly. As the conversation continued, the humans realized the aliens weren't judging them, or at least, not harshly. They genuinely wanted to comprehend humanity's complexities. By the time the meeting ended, both sides agreed to further discussions. As the alien ship ascended back into the sky, Daniel turned to Laura. "This isn't just about understanding them," he said. "They're making us understand ourselves." Laura nodded, clutching her notebook tightly. She knew this was only the beginning. Whatever the aliens had planned, it would force humanity to confront truths it had long ignored. And she intended to document every step of the journey. The following day, Daniel Carter received an unexpected invitation. Through a series of telepathic messages relayed by Cale, the aliens requested that he and Laura Bennett visit their ship for a more in-depth exchange. The idea was met with resistance from government officials, who argued it was too risky. But Daniel insisted, pointing out that refusing would only deepen mistrust. Reluctantly, they agreed, under the condition that the meeting would be monitored remotely. Laura was both excited and terrified as she boarded a small shuttle provided by the aliens. It wasn't like any vehicle she'd ever seen, smooth, silver, and completely silent. As they approached the massive alien ship hovering above the horizon, she felt her stomach twist into knots. Daniel sat beside her, his face pale but determined. Neither spoke. Words seemed inadequate in the face of what lay ahead. The shuttle docked seamlessly with the alien vessel, and a soft hum signaled the opening of the airlock. Stepping inside, Laura gasped. The interior was unlike anything she could have imagined. Walls shimmered with faint, pulsating light, and the floor felt warm beneath her shoes. There were no corners or sharp edges. Everything flowed together in organic curves. It was beautiful, yet strangely disorienting. Cale greeted them almost immediately, accompanied by two other Valens. Their movements were fluid, almost hypnotic. "Welcome," Cale's voice echoed in their minds. "We wish to share our understanding of the universe, and yours." With a wave of his hand, holographic projections appeared around them. Images of distant planets, strange creatures, and advanced civilizations flickered to life, surrounding Daniel and Laura in a dazzling display. One projection showed a species of insect-like beings who resolved disputes through intricate dances rather than violence. Another depicted a peaceful aquatic race that communicated through bioluminescent patterns. Each civilization was unique, yet none had waged war in the way humans did. Cale paused, then turned his attention back to Daniel and Laura. "Your kind puzzles us," he said. "Why do you destroy when cooperation could achieve so much more?" Daniel frowned, struggling to find the right words. "It's complicated," he began. "Humans are driven by emotions, fear, anger, greed. Sometimes we act without thinking, especially when we feel threatened." He hesitated, glancing at Laura. "But not all humans are like that. Many strive for peace, even if it's hard." Laura nodded, stepping forward. "Fear plays a big role," she added. "When people are scared, they lash out. War often comes from a place of desperation, not malice." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But humans also rebuild. We create, we adapt, we survive. That's part of who we are, too." Cale tilted his head, studying her intently. "Survival is commendable," he replied. "Yet your methods are contradictory. You fight to live, yet in fighting, you risk everything you seek to protect." The weight of his observation hit Laura like a punch to the chest. She glanced at Daniel, who looked equally unsettled. For all their advancements, humanity still grappled with its darker impulses. The aliens' perspective forced them to confront uncomfortable truths about their own nature. As the discussion continued, the Valens shared more insights into their own history. They revealed that their species had once faced extinction due to internal conflicts. Over millennia, they evolved to prioritize harmony over dominance, developing technologies that eliminated scarcity and promoted unity. "We learned the cost of war," Cale explained. "Now we seek to understand others who walk the same path." By the time the meeting ended, both Daniel and Laura felt drained but enlightened. As they returned to Earth aboard the shuttle, neither spoke. The enormity of what they'd learned pressed heavily on their minds. Laura clutched her notebook tightly, already scribbling notes. The aliens weren't just observers. They were teachers, offering humanity a chance to reflect on its choices. Back on the ground, military personnel swarmed the shuttle, eager for updates. But Daniel waved them off, his expression unreadable. "We need time to process this," he said firmly. Laura nodded in agreement. Whatever came next, one thing was clear. The aliens weren't here to judge humanity. They were here to challenge it. And the real test had only just begun. Back on Earth, the news of Daniel and Laura's visit to the alien ship spread quickly. Governments scrambled to analyze every detail they shared, while the public devoured interviews and reports. People were divided. Some saw hope in the aliens' peaceful demeanor, while others grew suspicious. Conspiracy theories flourished online, with many claiming the Valens had ulterior motives. Amid the chaos, whispers of a secret military operation began to surface. Laura stumbled upon the first clue during a late-night phone call with an old colleague. "There's something you should know," he said cryptically. His voice was low, almost fearful. "The military isn't just observing, it's planning something big." Before she could ask more, the line went dead. The next morning, Laura dug deeper, reaching out to trusted sources within defense circles. What she uncovered chilled her to the bone. A classified mission codenamed *Iron Fist*. Its goal: to capture one of the smaller alien scout ships using advanced drones and reverse engineer its technology. Daniel learned of the operation separately, through a tense meeting with General Hayes. "We can't afford to be naive," Hayes argued, slamming his fist on the table. "If these aliens have tech that could give us an edge, we need it. For protection, if nothing else." Daniel protested, warning that provoking the Valens could have catastrophic consequences. But Hayes dismissed his concerns, insisting the operation would proceed as planned. Frustrated and alarmed, Daniel reached out to Laura. They met in a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. "This is reckless," Daniel whispered, leaning across the table. "The Valens already know we're capable of fear and aggression. If we attack them, even indirectly, they'll lose trust in us." Laura nodded grimly. "And the world will see it too," she added. "If this goes wrong, it could undo everything we've built so far." Determined to prevent disaster, Laura decided to act. She wrote an explosive article exposing *Iron Fist*, detailing its objectives and potential risks. Her editor hesitated, fearing backlash from powerful figures, but Laura insisted. "People deserve to know the truth," she argued. The article went live that evening, igniting a firestorm of debate. Some condemned the operation as dangerous and unethical, while others supported it, claiming humanity couldn't afford to remain passive. Military officials denied the allegations, but the damage was done. Public pressure mounted, forcing leaders to reconsider their plans. Meanwhile, Daniel took a different approach. He contacted Cal directly, explaining the situation in a private telepathic exchange. To his surprise, Cal didn't seem angry or afraid. Instead, he sounded almost curious. "So your kind prepares for conflict even when none is offered," Cal mused. "Perhaps this is part of what makes you unique." Daniel struggled to defend humanity's actions. "Not all of us agree with this," he said firmly. "Many believe violence only leads to more suffering." Cal nodded slowly, his glowing form radiating calmness. "Then let them prove it," he replied. "Actions speak louder than words." The night before *Iron Fist* was set to launch, tensions reached a breaking point. Protesters gathered outside military bases, holding signs that read "Peace over power" and "Trust the Valens." Inside, Colonel Nathan Brooks, the man leading the operation, ignored the protests. He believed the mission was necessary, no matter the cost. "If we don't take control now," he told his team, "we'll regret it later." At dawn, the operation began. Drones armed with experimental weapons soared into the sky, targeting a lone Valen scout ship hovering over a remote desert. The attack unfolded in seconds. The drones fired, their projectiles streaking toward the alien vessel. But instead of exploding or retreating, the scout ship emitted a pulse of energy that disabled every drone instantly. The machines plummeted to the ground like dead birds. On the ground, soldiers watched in stunned silence as the scout ship remained untouched, its surface gleaming under the rising sun. Then, a message echoed in their minds. You seek power, yet you waste lives. Prove yourselves worthy. With that, the ship vanished, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. News of the failed ambush spread rapidly, sparking outrage and shame. Videos of the event went viral, showing the futility of humanity's attempt to overpower the Valens. Public opinion shifted dramatically, with many calling for transparency and diplomacy. For Daniel and Laura, the incident confirmed their worst fears. Humanity's instinct for conflict could undo its chance at progress. But it also hinted at something greater, a test the Valens had been preparing all along. The fallout from the failed ambush was swift and intense. News outlets around the world replayed footage of the drones falling helplessly from the sky, their advanced technology rendered useless against the Valens' effortless defense. Social media erupted with anger and disbelief. Protesters flooded the streets, holding signs that read, "Stop the war games," and "Listen to the aliens." Governments faced mounting pressure to abandon aggressive tactics and focus on peaceful dialogue. For Daniel Carter and Laura Bennett, the incident confirmed what they had feared. Humanity's fear-driven instincts were its greatest weakness. Colonel Nathan Brooks, however, refused to back down. Seething with frustration, he paced his office, replaying the operation in his mind. How could they have failed so completely? The Valens had neutralized Earth's most advanced weapons without firing a single shot. Their superiority was undeniable, but that only fueled Brooks' determination. "We can't just sit here and do nothing," he muttered to himself. "If we don't take control, they'll leave us behind." Brooks wasn't alone in his thinking. Behind closed doors, military leaders debated whether to escalate their efforts. Some argued for another attempt, this time with more firepower. Others warned that further aggression would only alienate the Valens and possibly provoke them. General Hayes, who had previously supported Brooks, now seemed hesitant. "We're playing with fire," he admitted during one tense meeting. "One wrong move, and we could lose everything." Meanwhile, Daniel and Laura worked tirelessly to counteract the growing tide of militarism. They gave interviews, wrote articles, and spoke at public forums, urging people to see the aliens not as threats but as opportunities. "They came here to understand us," Laura said during a televised debate. "But instead of showing them our best qualities, we've shown them our worst fears and our readiness to attack first, ask questions later." Kale and the Valens remained silent in the days following the ambush. Their ships continued to hover above major cities, unmoving and unthreatening. Yet their presence felt heavier now, as if they were waiting for humanity to make a choice. Finally, after nearly a week of silence, Kale reached out once more. Through a telepathic message broadcast globally, he announced a challenge, a series of trials designed to test humanity's intelligence, creativity, and ability to cooperate. If successful, the Valens promised to share knowledge that could advance human civilization. If they failed, the aliens would leave, deeming humanity unworthy of contact. The announcement sent shockwaves through the world. Some saw the trials as a chance for redemption, while others viewed them as a cruel test of worthiness. Governments scrambled to assemble teams of representatives, selecting individuals based on expertise, leadership, and adaptability. Daniel and Laura were among those chosen, alongside Maria Rodriguez, a robotics engineer known for her innovative designs, and Ethan Cole, a former soldier turned peace activist. Each brought unique skills to the table, but none knew what to expect. As the team prepared for the unknown, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Maria approached the challenge with clinical precision, analyzing every possible scenario. Ethan, on the other hand, carried the weight of his past experiences, wondering if humanity truly deserved a second chance. Laura used her journalistic instincts to document everything, hoping to capture the lessons learned along the way. And Daniel wrestled with doubts about whether humans could rise to the occasion, or if their flaws would ultimately define them. On the eve of the trials, the group gathered in a secure facility to discuss strategy. None of them slept well that night, their minds racing with questions. What did the Valens consider worthy? Could humanity prove itself capable of change? As dawn broke, they boarded a shuttle provided by the aliens, heading toward an uncertain future. Outside, crowds cheered and protested, their voices blending into a cacophony of hope and fear. When the shuttle docked with the Valen ship, Kale greeted them with the same calm demeanor as before. "You have been given a rare opportunity," he said, his voice resonating in their minds. "Do not waste it." With that, the trials began. For Daniel, Laura, and the others, the real challenge wasn't just solving puzzles or working together. It was proving that humanity could overcome its deepest flaws. And as they stepped into the unknown, they realized the true test wasn't about impressing the Valens. It was about proving something to themselves. The first trial began without warning. One moment, the group stood in a large, dimly lit chamber aboard the Valen ship, and the next, holographic walls sprang to life around them. The room transformed into a labyrinth of shifting pathways, glowing symbols, and floating platforms that appeared and disappeared at random intervals. A soft hum filled the air, followed by Cal's voice echoing in their minds. "Work together to reach the center. Time is limited." Maria Rodriguez immediately took charge, her sharp eyes scanning the maze for patterns. "There has to be a logic to this," she muttered, pulling out a small tablet she'd brought along. She began sketching the layout, trying to predict where the paths would lead. Ethan Cole hovered nearby, his military training kicking in as he assessed potential dangers. "We need to move fast," he said. "But we also can't afford mistakes." Daniel Carter watched silently, his mind racing. He noticed something Maria had missed. The glowing symbols weren't random. They formed sequences similar to ancient human scripts he'd studied. "Wait," he said suddenly, pointing at one of the walls. "These symbols, they're clues. They tell us which path to take." Laura Bennett jotted down his observation, her pen flying across her notebook. "If we follow the sequence, we might find a pattern," she added. The team moved cautiously, guided by Daniel's decoding and Maria's mapping. But the maze wasn't just about solving puzzles. It was designed to test their patience and teamwork. At one point, a platform collapsed beneath Ethan just as he stepped onto it. Quick reflexes saved him from falling, but the incident left everyone shaken. "We can't panic," Laura reminded them, her voice steady despite the tension. "That's what they're testing, how we handle pressure." As they progressed, disagreements flared. Maria wanted to rely solely on logic, while Ethan argued for instinct. "Sometimes you don't have time to think," he snapped. "You just act." Daniel tried to mediate, urging them to combine both approaches. "This isn't about choosing one over the other," he said. "It's about balance." Slowly, the group began to synchronize, each member contributing their strengths. The second trial proved even more challenging. They were placed in a simulated environment resembling Earth's most extreme climates: scorching deserts, freezing tundras, and stormy oceans. Their task was to navigate the terrain as a team, using limited resources provided by the Valens. Supplies included food packets, water purifiers, and tools, but not enough for everyone. Decisions had to be made quickly: who got what, and how much. Ethan surprised the group by stepping back during the decision-making process. "I'm used to taking charge," he admitted, "but this isn't about me. We all need to have a say." His humility broke the ice, allowing the others to voice their thoughts openly. Laura suggested rationing supplies equally, while Maria proposed prioritizing those with critical skills. Daniel listened carefully before suggesting a compromise. Prioritize based on immediate needs, but ensure no one was left behind. Tensions rose when they reached the ocean segment of the simulation. Waves crashed violently around them, and the team struggled to stay afloat. Ethan used his physical strength to anchor the group, while Laura kept morale high by reminding everyone of their shared goal. "We're proving we can work together," she shouted over the roar of the water. "Don't let fear divide us." By the time they completed the second trial, exhaustion weighed heavily on the group. But there was also a sense of accomplishment. They had faced adversity and found ways to cooperate. As they prepared for the final trial, Kale appeared once more. "You are learning," he said simply, "but the hardest test lies ahead." The final trial involved a holographic simulation of global resource management. Each team member represented a region of the world, tasked with allocating energy, food, and technology to meet the needs of their population. The catch: resources were finite, and decisions made by one person affected everyone else. It was a stark reminder of humanity's real-world challenges. At first, arguments erupted. Maria pushed for industrial growth, while Ethan advocated for defense spending. Laura argued for education and healthcare, emphasizing long-term benefits over short-term gains. Daniel tried to bridge the gaps, proposing solutions that balanced immediate survival with sustainable development. Frustrations ran high, but slowly, painfully, the group began to listen to each other. In the end, they chose a strategy that prioritized cooperation over competition. Factories were built alongside schools, and renewable energy projects replaced fossil fuels. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. When the simulation ended, Kel regarded them thoughtfully. "You have shown resilience and adaptability," he said. "But remember, this is only the beginning." After the final trial, the group was led to a large chamber aboard the Valen ship. The room glowed softly, its walls shimmering like liquid silver. Cadel stood at the center, his translucent form radiating a calm yet commanding presence. Around him floated holographic projections of Earth, its continents, cities, and ecosystems. The images shifted constantly, showing both the beauty and fragility of the planet. "You have completed the trials," Cale began, his voice echoing in their minds. "But now you must understand why we came." Daniel Carter leaned forward slightly, his curiosity piqued. Laura Bennett clutched her notebook tightly, ready to capture every word. Maria Rodriguez and Ethan Cole exchanged glances, their exhaustion overshadowed by anticipation. Whatever Cale was about to reveal, they knew it would change everything. Cale gestured toward the holograms, which now displayed scenes from the Valen's own history. Once, their civilization had been much like humanity's, divided, fearful, and prone to conflict. Wars had ravaged their world, leaving scars that nearly led to extinction. But instead of succumbing to despair, the Valens chose a different path. Over millennia, they developed technologies to eliminate scarcity, fostered cooperation over competition, and evolved into a society driven by peace and unity. "We learned the cost of war," Cale explained. "Now we seek others who can learn the same." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Laura felt a lump rise in her throat as she realized the true purpose of the Valen's visit. They weren't just observers, they were teachers, offering humanity a chance to avoid the mistakes they had made. Daniel nodded slowly, understanding dawning on him. "You want us to see what's possible," he said, "to show us that we don't have to repeat our past." Cale inclined his head. "Your species is at a crossroads," he continued. "You possess great potential for creation or destruction. The choice is yours." He paused, studying each member of the group. "That is why we issued the challenge, to see if you could overcome division and fear, even for a moment." Maria spoke up, her voice steady but tinged with awe. "So this wasn't just about testing our intelligence or skills. It was about proving we can work together." Cale responded with a faint nod. "Cooperation is the foundation of survival. Without it, no amount of technology or power will save you." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his mind racing. As a former soldier, he had always believed strength came from dominance. But the trials, and the Valen's message, had forced him to rethink that belief. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. Do we pass or fail? Cal's expression remained unreadable. You succeeded in the trials, but the greater test lies ahead. Will you use what you have learned to build a better future, or will you return to old ways? He gestured again, and the holograms shifted once more. This time, they showed advanced alien technology, clean energy reactors, medical devices capable of curing diseases, and machines that could purify polluted environments. We offer you this knowledge, Cal said, but it comes with a warning. Technology alone cannot fix your flaws. Only unity can. The weight of his words settled over the group. For Laura, it was a moment of clarity. She thought about all the conflicts she had covered as a journalist, the wars, the protests, the suffering, and realized how much of it stemmed from fear and mistrust. If humanity could find a way to overcome those barriers, perhaps the Valen's gift could truly transform the world. Before departing, Cal handed Daniel a small device, no larger than a coin. Its surface shimmered faintly, pulsing with an inner light. This contains the knowledge we promised, he said. Use it wisely. With that, the Valens prepared to leave. Their ships began ascending into the sky, disappearing one by one until only silence remained. Back on Earth, the group faced the daunting task of sharing what they had experienced. Governments and corporations clamored for access to the device, eager to unlock its secrets. But Daniel, Laura, Maria, and Ethan agreed. It couldn't be used recklessly. They formed a council to oversee its implementation, ensuring the technology benefited everyone, not just a privileged few. As weeks turned into months, the impact of the Valen's gift became undeniable. Clean energy projects sprang up worldwide, reducing reliance on fossil fuels. Medical breakthroughs saved countless lives, and efforts to restore damaged ecosystems gained momentum. Yet, the greatest change wasn't technological, it was human. People began to see themselves not as individuals competing for resources, but as part of a shared global community. For Daniel and Laura, the journey had been transformative. They had started as skeptics, unsure if humanity deserved a second chance. Now they saw glimpses of hope, a fragile but growing belief that change was possible. As they stood together one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Laura smiled. Maybe we're not so hopeless after all, she said softly. Daniel nodded, gazing at the horizon. Not if we keep trying. A year had passed since the Valen's departure, and Earth felt like a different planet. The changes were undeniable. Cleaner air, healthier populations, and a growing sense of global unity. Yet beneath the surface, humanity's old struggles persisted. Conflicts still erupted in certain regions, fueled by mistrust and inequality. Corporations quietly maneuvered to exploit the new technologies for profit. And while many embraced the ideals of cooperation and peace, others clung to fear, unwilling to let go of the past. Daniel Carter found himself reflecting on this duality one evening as he stood on a hill overlooking a sprawling city. The skyline was dotted with wind turbines and solar panels, their sleek designs blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. Children played in nearby parks, their laughter carried by a gentle breeze. It was a scene that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. Yet Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was still teetering on the edge of something fragile. Laura Bennett shared his concerns. Her reporting had taken her to places where the Valen's influence hadn't fully reached. Remote villages, war-torn areas, and communities resistant to change. She saw glimpses of hope. Farmers using advanced irrigation systems to combat drought, teachers introducing students to sustainable practices, and local leaders working to bridge divides. But she also witnessed moments of regression, families displaced by greed-driven development, leaders exploiting fears to maintain control, and individuals rejecting progress out of nostalgia for simpler times. One night, Laura sat at her desk, staring at a blank page in her notebook. She had been trying to write an article summarizing the past year, but the words wouldn't come. How could she capture the complexity of it all? Humanity wasn't a single story, it was millions of stories, each shaped by unique circumstances. Some were uplifting, others were heartbreaking. Together, they painted a picture of a species striving to evolve, even as it stumbled along the way. Maria Rodriguez called during one of these restless nights. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "We need to do more. Yes, we've made progress, but it's not enough. People are still suffering, still fighting over resources. We can't let this momentum fade." Laura agreed, though she wondered how much they could truly achieve. Change required time, patience, and sacrifice, things not everyone was willing to give. Ethan Cole, too, grappled with doubts. His work promoting disarmament had earned him praise, but resistance remained strong. Military leaders argued that giving up weapons would leave nations vulnerable, while some civilians feared losing the security they associated with armed forces. Ethan knew these fears weren't unfounded, but he believed humanity couldn't move forward without taking risks. "Peace isn't safe," he often said. "It's brave." Amid these challenges, Hal's final message echoed in their minds. Prove yourselves worthy. It wasn't just about passing the trials or accepting the Valen's gift. It was about living up to the potential they had seen in humanity. For Daniel, Laura, Maria, and Ethan, this realization brought both clarity and responsibility. They weren't just witnesses to change. They were participants, tasked with ensuring it endured. Slowly, efforts began to take shape. A coalition of scientists, activists, and community leaders launched Asterisk, the Unity Project Asterisk, an initiative aimed at addressing lingering inequalities and fostering global collaboration. Schools introduced programs teaching children about empathy, critical thinking, and sustainability. Artists created murals and music celebrating diversity and resilience. Even social media, once a source of division, became a platform for sharing solutions and amplifying voices of hope. By the end of the second year, signs of lasting transformation emerged. Renewable energy powered nearly 70% of the globe, reducing reliance on fossil fuels. Medical advancements saved millions of lives, while environmental restoration projects brought ecosystems back from the brink. Most importantly, people began to see themselves as part of a shared destiny, a fragile but interconnected web. Yet Daniel often reminded himself that the journey wasn't over. Humanity's flaws hadn't disappeared. They had simply evolved. Fear, greed, and conflict still lingered, waiting for moments of weakness to reassert themselves. But perhaps that was the point. The Valens hadn't come to offer perfection. They had come to inspire growth. As Laura wrote her final article of the year, she paused, pen hovering above the page. Then, slowly, she began to write. Humanity is flawed, yes, but it is also resilient, creative, and capable of extraordinary compassion. The road ahead will be difficult, but if we continue to choose unity over division, hope over fear, then maybe, just maybe. Years passed, and the world continued to transform in ways both subtle and profound. The Valen's gift had become a cornerstone of human progress, but it was the lessons they left behind that truly shaped the future. Humanity learned to see itself not as conquerors of nature or each other, but as stewards of a shared existence. Yet old habits persisted. Greed, fear, and conflict still lingered, reminders of the species' imperfect nature. Still, there was hope. Hope that humanity could rise above its flaws, one step at a time. Daniel Carter spent his later years reflecting on the journey. Now older, with silver threading through his hair, he often visited schools to talk about the trials and the Valen's message. Children listened wide-eyed as he described the shimmering ships, the glowing beings, and the tests that had pushed humanity to its limits. "They didn't come to judge us," he would say, his voice warm but firm. "They came to teach us, to show us what we could become if we worked together." Laura Bennett, too, found purpose in sharing stories of change. Her book, Asterisk Fearless Yet Fragile Asterisk, became a global bestseller, translated into dozens of languages. It chronicled the highs and lows of humanity's evolution, the triumphs of unity, and the struggles against division. In interviews, she often spoke about the fragility of progress. "We're like a tree growing in rocky soil," she said. "It takes time, care, and patience to thrive. But if we nurture it, we can grow strong roots." Maria Rodriguez dedicated her life to innovation, ensuring the Valens technology was used responsibly. She helped establish ethical guidelines for its implementation, preventing corporations from exploiting it for profit. Her work inspired a new generation of engineers and scientists who saw technology not as a tool for dominance, but as a means to improve lives. "Progress isn't about power," she told her students. "It's about possibility." Ethan Cole remained a voice for peace, traveling the world to promote disarmament and reconciliation. Though resistance persisted, he never gave up. His speeches resonated deeply, especially among those who had lived through war. "I used to think strength meant fighting," he admitted during one talk. "But true strength is choosing to heal instead of harm. That's the hardest fight of all." The global initiative Project Harmony grew into a movement, uniting people across borders and cultures. Communities collaborated on projects to combat climate change, eradicate poverty, and preserve cultural heritage. Art and music flourished, celebrating diversity while highlighting shared humanity. Social media, once a battleground for division, became a platform for connection and collaboration. People began to see themselves not as isolated individuals, but as threads in a vast, intricate tapestry. Yet, challenges remained. Conflicts still erupted, driven by inequality and mistrust. Corporations occasionally skirted regulations, seeking to monopolize resources, and some resisted change, clinging to outdated beliefs. But these moments of regression were met with resilience. Protesters marched for justice, activists fought for transparency, and ordinary citizens stood up for what was right. Each struggle reinforced the lesson Cal had imparted. Unity required effort, and growth demanded courage. One evening, as Daniel and Laura sat together watching the sunset, they reflected on how far humanity had come. The sky glowed orange and pink, mirroring the colors of hope and determination. "Do you think they're watching?" Laura asked softly, gazing at the stars. "The Valens, I mean." Daniel smiled, his eyes distant. "Maybe," he replied. "But I think they already know. We're doing our best. That's what matters." As the years stretched into decades, humanity continued to evolve. Mistakes were made, but lessons were learned. Fear still lingered, but so did courage. Greed still surfaced, but generosity prevailed more often than before. War hadn't disappeared entirely, but peace became the goal rather than the exception. Slowly, painfully, humanity proved itself capable of change. In the end, the Valens' visit wasn't just about understanding humans. It was about helping them understand themselves. They had offered a mirror, reflecting both humanity's flaws and its potential. Whether humanity chose to embrace that potential depended on its willingness to keep trying. And try they did. For Daniel, Laura, Maria, and Ethan, the journey had been worth it. They had started as skeptics, unsure if humanity deserved a second chance. Now they saw glimpses of something greater, a fragile but growing belief in the possibility of a better future. As Laura wrote in the final chapter of her book, "We are not perfect. But maybe we don't have to be. Maybe, just maybe, being human is enough."